Thank you. In keeping with the theme of your national conference, I am very happy to be here and really appreciate the invitation. I mean it. Thank you. I really am. You are most probably hoping that I am not going to be boring. And you might be particularly worried that I don't go over my time limit because you either need to get coffee or go to the bathroom in that 10-minute break. So I will do my best. We are together in this place and time because of something called a shared identity. I've been most fortunate in my professional life to travel around the world, meeting and working with people of all colors of skin, religious backgrounds, ethnic heritages, and spoken languages. I've found that no matter where I go, it seems to me that people generally have the same fears, dreams, and hopes. Many fear making mistakes in front of others. That's where I am right now. Many of them fear death. Most dream of having more money and more time to be able to do the things that we want to do and less of the things that we have to. But what I have found is that all of them hope that they raise their children well. And that's why we're here, because it is part of your job to raise children well. Because the largest portion of my travels has come about by my association with the International Kodály Society, almost everyone I meet is a music teacher, or, as those of us in this room more specifically, they have a shared identity as Kodály educators. Why do we call ourselves this? Why not just music teachers? For many of us, it's because our education in Kodály's vision and philosophy tremendously reshaped the way we have approached teaching in our music classrooms. For me, 5 ideas have sprung from this particular thought. First, I believe that our shared identity as Kodály educators comes to us from studying, accepting, and teaching through the lens of the vision of Zoltán Kodály. Vision is defined as a mode of seeing or conceiving with unusual discernment or foresight. Kodály was certainly a man of vision concerning music education in Hungary, so much so that at this point in time, his philosophy has reached around the entire globe. For all of us, an important part of his vision is to make the masterpieces of world literature public property, to convey them to people of every kind and rank, as it is the right of every citizen to be taught the basic elements of music, to be handed the key with which he can enter the locked world of music, to open the ear and heart of the millions to serious music is a great thing, end quote. Kodály gave us some key ideas about his vision with an understanding of the fact that the future can only be shaped through children. So he directed us to begin by using children's songs and games, because singing games and tunes gives a send-off to children brought up in the country, which will all through their lives warm some small recess of their souls, end quote. Kodály also sternly warned, teach music and singing at school in such a way that it is not a torture, but a joy for the pupil. Instill a thirst for finer music in him, a thirst which will last for a lifetime. Music must not be approached from its intellectual, rational side, nor should it be conveyed to the child as a system of algebraic symbols or as the secret writing of a language with which he has no connection. The way should be paved for direct intuition, unquote. And most importantly, he instructed, it is not technique that is the essence of the art, but the soul. As soon as the soul can communicate freely, without obstacles, a complete musical effect is created. We hear these quotes quite often. We know some of them by heart. We post them in our music classrooms, or we print them in our concert programs. They're not our own original ideas or words, to say the least, but now fully accepted tenets of our own vision of teaching music. Second, I believe our shared identity as Kodály educators comes to us from studying, accepting, and teaching through the lens of the philosophy of Zoltán Kodály. As educators, we know that children learn what things are when they learn what they are not. So to answer the question of what is the Kodály philosophy, I will begin by saying that the Kodály of the 21st century is not your parents' Kodály. It's not Ta'atiti. It's not a methodology. It is not prescribed teaching techniques. Kodály of the 21st century is an understanding of teaching processes and children's abilities to learn in music. We are a literacy-based music education program using teaching sequences and learning processes based on the students' needs, geography, backgrounds, and spoken languages. This should be first. We are music educators who use the tools of solmization and beat function rhythm syllables to lead students to great music of the world in many different genre and style periods. How do we teach through this philosophy? We approach singing, which is the essence of the concept, by teaching the healthy use of the natural instrument that every child possesses, the voice. We approach choral music through part work skill development adjusted for all ages and abilities of singers. We approach general music through listening to, playing, singing, improvising, moving to, reading, writing, and especially enjoying the highest quality of folk, world, and art music available. We approach instrumental teaching through the ears and the singing voice first. What outcomes do we expect of this philosophy? We expect our students to come to love their own music and musical heritages so that they may more fully understand the great music of the world. We expect our students to realize that by practicing to become better musicians is difficult, but that by doing so, they come to understand that the beauty is in the effort put forth to produce the wanted outcomes, not the product. We expect that those who come to love good music through inspiring and joyful work combined with the cultural uplift of many musics grow, not only as musicians, but as compassionate humans and global citizens. For it is our job, believed Kodály, that through music we educate the soul. Third, I believe that because our shared identity as Kodály educators comes to us from studying, accepting, and teaching through the lens of the Kodály vision and philosophy, it has raised the professional level of our occupation from a job to a vocation. Here's what I mean. Your personal devotion to music grows from fidelity towards your own talents and from deep urgings in your soul. Bringing those forth together is your vocation. This word is derived from vocare, meaning to call, and is defined as a person's employment or main occupation, especially regarded as particularly worthy and requiring great dedication. Just ask anyone married to a Kodály educator about, right? They'll be able to explain the meaning of dedication. Or maybe I mean complain about dedication. Explain, complain. When you're married, it's the same thing. But they support you just the same. Yeah. Your calling, then, for each of us in this room is music education. Whether it be introducing preschoolers to organized music instruction for the first time, giving the gift of music literacy to elementary students, leading middle school musicians to develop excellent instrumental technique, wowing the audience with an outstanding high school musical, supervising future music educators, or sharing music widely by taking your community ensemble on tour. How fortunate we are to have a purposeful profession rather than, as so many people in our countries, just a job. Fourth, I believe that our shared identity as Kodály educators comes to us from studying, accepting, and teaching through the lens of Kodály's ideology. To better understand the roots of this ideology, we can look to the sources of Kodály's inspiration. In a 1953 address at the Liszt Academy entitled, "Who is a Good Musician?" Kodály quoted from the album For the Young, wherein Schumann emphasized the importance of a familiarity with the old clefs and their practical use, the necessity of refinement in musical taste, and how it was essential to play through a Bach fugue every day. These should be transposed as well as played in their original keys. Kodály took Schumann's approach a step farther by saying that the old German idea of instrumental music making and training should be modified with a Latin approach. It's not enough to hear the music before reading, Kodály taught. One must be able to sing it as well. Interestingly, if we move backward and follow Schumann's inspiration, we go back to inspect Bach's course of instruction of keyboard technique and find out from his students that, in the first instance, he only gave exercises in touch, in fingering, and in the equal and independent action of every finger of both hands. To this he kept the pupil for at least a month, but would sweeten the bitter dose by giving him graceful little pieces, in each of which some special technical difficulty was dealt with. Even embellishments had to be practiced persistently in both hands from the very first. When a certain proficiency had been attained in these elements, he went on at once to the root of the matter in difficult compositions, by preference in his own. Before the pupil began to study one, Bach played it to him, thus rousing his zeal and a desire not to fail of a happy result, end quote. It's quite compelling to find that Bach had his students hear the correct playing of his music before they began the study of each piece. This is in contradiction to many piano pedagogies today, at least in our country. Of course, the idea of hearing the music before one learns to perform it forms the basis of the sound before sight pedagogy proposed by Kodály. Kodály also understood that children must learn musical material that emphasizes the mother tongue. Therefore, the earliest music introduced is the child's native music and folk songs of her country. Kodály and Bartók worked tirelessly to collect these tunes for Hungary, setting an example for all of us to follow. Holy Names University has particularly taken this ideal to heart at an institutional level, as exemplified by their public access folk song collection. And I'd like to encourage you all to do the same. When we put Kodály's profound work into context, we realize that Bach influenced Schumann, who influenced Kodály, who influenced outstanding students to become master teachers who have led us to teach music to children through this vision, philosophy, and ideology. How is it then when I meet music educators from around the globe, and most particularly those of us with a shared identity as Kodály educators, much of the conversation is solidly fixed on methodology and materials, and not so much on the vision, philosophy, and ideology. One reason, practicality, and I understand it. 3 or 4 multi-week summers of intense study honestly leave us precious little time to discuss philosophy because so many teachers are so hungry for the pedagogical assistance they did not receive as undergraduate music educators. It is the same in our country. It's the same. You learn about teaching, but you do not learn how to teach in most of our undergraduate programs. However, with that said, we must be careful and always keep in mind as Kodály educators not to confuse the use of particular musical tools with the understanding of a life lived through the lens of a particular philosophy. To understand how to teach through Kodály's vision, philosophy, and ideology, to truly share this identity as Kodály educators, we must all come to know Kodály personally, each in our own way. But how do we do this? Read and reread his writings. Write about him. Study with master teachers. Listen to, analyze, perform, and conduct his music and music of his students. Read critiques of his music and of his writings. Delve into very heated discussions with friends who also base their teaching on his philosophy. Plus, probably more importantly so, delve into heated discussion with friends who do not share this philosophy. Ponder the special quotes. You have that one memorized. Right? Attend conferences and workshops presented in his name. And perhaps one of the things that we know least about is to research and read about the people who most directly influenced him. Robert Schumann, Sarah Glover and John Kerwin, Emile Chevet, as well as his friend Béla Bartók. Then read and research about the people that influenced each of his mentors. Johann Sebastian Bach for Robert Schumann, Guido d'Arezzo for Sarah Glover and John Kerwin, Jean-Jacques Rousseau for Chevet, Galine, Paris and Paris, and Ferenc Liszt for Béla Bartók. Then base our teachings on these things. And because we know Kodály so well, at some point in our lives, his ideals become inseparable from our own. Our ideals will have grown because we have had a personal relationship with all things Kodály. Finally, I believe that our shared identity as Kodály educators comes to us because the vision and philosophy has reached so much further into our lives than just teaching in the music classroom. There's fascinating information that most students studying in summer programs in the US no longer learn about today. I don't know how it is here in Australia, but our beloved Jean Sinor advised us to do the following based on how Kodály lived his life. Can we close the doors? Sorry. It's okay. 1, get to know the other arts. poetry, visual art, dance, novels, and essays, in order to learn an understanding of human nature can be accomplished in a variety of ways. We don't have the corner on the market, even though we often claim that we do, on creativity and being that special subject that for kids who don't get everything else, music's their thing. There's lots of things, and if we embrace those things, we become better. Try to understand several languages, because learning a different way of expressing yourself gives you another way of thinking. Work on understanding issues and causes on a world scope and attempt to modify them through our music. Keep physically fit and live in harmony with nature. Stick our neck out for things we believe in and become activists for the cultural level of our country. This is the way Kodály lived his life. Apply multitudinous philosophies that we've encountered in our lives in order to be the artist of our own lives. And come to understand that every minute of life is valuable and not a one should be wasting simply because we weren't paying attention. Gene Signor was able to lead us to understand some of Kodály's tenets that are still passed on in the United States. We do strive to become excellent musician teachers, which means keeping up our chops outside of the music classrooms. We must think of ourselves first as musicians and work hard at staying in touch with the kinds of experiences and feelings that we are trying to make our students sensitive to. If the last time you were moved by music was in your college choir tour, go get moved again. And with all of these beautiful people surrounding us now, you should look. You should look around. All these beautiful friends. Friends who actually really, truly get us when nobody else in the world seems to. Not the classroom teachers, not the librarian, and certainly not the principal. Right? We spend time together at these conferences and workshops. We go on our Facebook groups. We share our ideas through email, or if you're lucky enough to be close to friends, trade materials over coffee, thus continuing to embrace and incorporate new aspects of excellence in music education, in our own teaching, and in our own lives. This is what Kodály did. Embraced and incorporated new aspects of excellence. He did not codify a way of doing things. He opened the world for us to individually embrace and incorporate new aspects of excellence in music education, in our own teaching, and in our own lives. Vision is not being able to see in the future. It is the ability to imagine a better future. That's what Kodály did. That's what the many leaders of Kodály organizations around the world have done and continue to do. And that's what I'm encouraging each of us to do. Each one of us, in our shared identity as Kodály educators, to visualize a better musical future for yourself, then set out to inspire, motivate, and influence your students through your vision your philosophy and your ideology with all of your heart, each and every day, thus educating their souls. Thank you.